Yeah, so I guess thanks for all of you for coming. So in this presentation, we're basically going to be talking about how you can apply Claude Code into your business. So we're going to start off by going over a few of the basics. Then we'll be diving into actual real cases that I've implemented for some of my clients as well. But yeah, I guess before we begin, a quick show of hands. Who has used Claude Code through the terminal specifically on their computer? Okay. And then I guess who's used it more through the desktop app? Okay. All right, cool. So you've all pretty much used Claude Code to some extent, or I guess are there any of you who haven't used it at all? Okay, cool. Perfect. So yeah, I guess for those of you who don't know me, my name's Rahul. So I joined part of the May cohort here. So I currently run an AI agency, and I've been working with about 50 plus business owners over the past couple of years or so, actually helping them automate and leverage AI. And I've been doing that for the past couple of years. I've been using AI myself for the past 3 years or so. I studied computer science, so I have somewhat of a technical understanding. But obviously nowadays with AI, coding is completely redundant. So yeah, I don't really code, just vibe code. And yeah, I use Claude Code pretty heavily every single day. So I'm sure a lot of you've seen kind of my setup, which might seem quite overwhelming, but this is how I'm using it. And I've got loads of different windows, which are all doing loads of different things, which is maybe a bit overkill, but yeah, I use it quite a lot and basically just have a separate monitor doing everything for me with Claude Code. And yeah, I guess the goal of this talk is to pretty much give you guys an idea of how you can leverage it in the same sort of way for specifically for your business. Now, most of you already know what Claude Code is, but I'll just kind of skim over this. Essentially, what it allows you to do is obviously build systems faster, so you can launch agents to perform specific tasks. And the way I like to use it is specifically through the terminal, so I'll be showing you a little bit about that. And we'll be showing you different internal tools and automations that you can actually build out using Claude Code to kind of launch agents to perform tasks a lot faster and a lot more efficiently. I guess the main benefit of using this system is that you can do things in parallel, simultaneously, whereas obviously back in the day, you're kind of doing one task at a time. Whereas now, obviously, based on my setup, I've got 10 different windows open. I'm doing one thing in this window, one thing there, one thing there, one thing there, and then this will finish, and then move over to this, and then I'm just basically doing 10 different things at once, which is it's so much faster. Essentially, the way I like to kind of break this down, I'm sure most of you probably already know this, so I'll just go over this bit fairly quickly, but there's sort of 4 parts that comprise and make up the whole system, right? So you have, I guess, the memory, which is how you feed in all of the context and business data into Claude Code. It's all of the Claude files. So you have the memory.md, the Claude.md file. These are all different markdown files which actually build up Claude Code in the way that you kind of use it, really. Then you have skills. So skills is sort of the way I like to envision that is within a business use case is you have different SOPs that you follow internally, and a skill is literally just kind of doing one SOP at a time. So for example, within my business, I focus a lot on creating content, right? So I have a skill for creating YouTube thumbnails. So essentially what a skill is it's just a slash command where you have a different kind of file on the back end which is performing specific instructions. So the YouTube thumbnail one is how I create thumbnails for my business, for my content, because I put out a fair bit of content. But you can have skills for a lot of different things, right? Like invoicing, proposals, kind of most SOPs that you follow within the business. They can be comprised into individual skills that you guys can follow. Then you can also launch different agents within Claude Code. So you can have agents to perform specific tasks. So whenever you don't really use agents directly, but when you go into Claude Code and you're using it through the terminal and you ask it to do a specific thing, what it's doing in the back end is it's launching an agent to actually go out and do that thing. It can also create sub-agents for various specific tasks. So if you're doing, say, building out a website, which is obviously quite a big build, it would launch sub-agents to be able to perform those different tasks and different things within the website. Then you have MCP, which is obviously how you integrate different tools together. So you might have your CRM, you might have Stripe, your inbox or your calendar, or basically any tools external tools that you're using within your business. You can connect that via MCP. So I guess the way I like to think of MCP is it's I guess how it differs from API is like API is choosing sort of one specific endpoint, right? So imagine you're using HubSpot as your CRM. You want to like write contacts to HubSpot. You have API, like there's a specific API endpoint for writing a contact, whereas MCP kind of like automatically chooses which API endpoint to use at one time. So like you have HubSpot endpoints for writing contacts, reading contacts, deleting contacts, or like whatever within HubSpot. MCP will automatically select which endpoint is correct to use in the correct instance, basically. Now, I guess in a business context, the main power comes from setting up your sort of second brain, right? So you probably heard that term a lot here from a few other people, but I guess that's sort of interchangeable with like second brain, Jarvis, or AI operating system. Those are kind of the same sort of things. There's sort of different layers to that second brain setup that I would that I usually kind of mention to people. But you have, I guess, the first layer, which is the most important, which is your context and data. So it's sort of the foundation of like every business in terms of like, what the business actually is, the culture behind the business, your sort of offers, like the clients within the business, and all the numbers, right? And you basically plug that in as the context and data layer. You can also obviously plug in your external tools, so like your CRM, your payment methods, your accounting tools. All of that stuff kind of is comprised within the context and data layer. Now, I guess the main reason you want to build out that layer is because you have there's so much knowledge within the business which is just kind of stuck in like most founders' heads, right? Especially in terms of how they make decisions, how the company culture is like formed. If you can log that into the context and data layer within your second brain, you can then build out better skills and better automations and agents later down the line. So I would always recommend starting off with that first layer. And then from there, you can build out the skills, right? Well, let me actually just give you an example of like the context and data within my business. So you probably heard of Obsidian, like from a few other people here. This is like my Obsidian setup for kind of my second brain. Originally, I was using Supabase, which is essentially just a database storage. Like imagine having several Google Sheets, which are kind of interlinked within one another. Like that is kind of another format of how you can store all of the company data within a second brain system. But this I guess Obsidian allows you to visualize that a bit better, right? So this is kind of essentially all of the company data is stored in this, I guess, like graph-like format, right? So you have all of the like meetings that we've taken, all of the kind of sales calls. This is like the central brain for the second brain kind of home. Claude index, so whenever Claude comes over to your second brain and wants to interact with it and pull data from it and pull additional context from it, it will come to the Claude index and kind of leverage that to follow the right steps, to go to the right nodes, to fetch the next data. Then you've also got like partnerships that we have internally. Essentially everything within the business is kind of logged within this second brain system. I guess the main benefit of having this as well is like if you have a team within the business, then you can set up a centralized dashboard and you can actually have role-based access for different members of your team. So like say you have a junior developer who needs access to all of the client information, they can then go into some sort of dashboard that you build out and actually pull information from your second brain. So instead of like coming to you as the business owner, you can sort of, I guess, free up a lot more of your time by putting all of that information and data into this sort of system. Yeah.
How do you distinguish between the skills which are meant to potentially evolve and like hardcore data that you don't want to be touched, you want it to be like a reference always?
Good question. Yeah. So I think that will come a lot more like in terms of the prompting. So I guess within my second brain, there's also skills in here somewhere. But yeah, there's skills in here somewhere. So it's pulling the skills and the SOPs from like my Claude Code. So it knows like those processes. But then it's also with the prompting in terms of how you actually like, I guess, kind of rank things, like prioritize certain things over another thing. Does that sort of answer your question?
Just checking like how do you safeguard the information that should never be tampered with because it's your source of truth versus information that is meant to be dynamic and regularly updated. Do you put them all in here or do you try to create more of a separation?
Yeah, good question. So I guess in that specific scenario, you probably want to create a separation where you have like the data that you're regularly updating in like one segment of the system, and then like the other data would be in another segment, so that it's not tampered. Do you mean tampered by like with yourself, like by yourself, or with like people on your team, or just everyone? Like
whatever reason, like it could be regularly updated from how you're coding and you keep updating your skills.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure that you don't end up with contamination over time, because that would be very bad. You'd have to do it all over again. Like, how do you make sure that once you begin, you're not going to have to go back and clean up your entire graph?
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, I would probably separate that out into like your data that you don't want to be tampered with in like one separate section, and then the data that you kind of like don't like you obviously want to change on a regular basis in another section. That's how I would recommend separating it out, essentially, if that makes sense.
You could also use classical uses and find words like the file system has a write system.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Yeah, you can sort of get rid of the write access so that it can't write to those specific files. It can only read from them, so they can't be tampered with, if that makes sense. So you have different file access types, right? Like read, write. So you kind of just can control it in that way. Though. It's a good idea. Yeah, and then I guess once you've built out the context and data layer, once you've got that second brain setup done, then you would go on to build out your skills. So you have all of the context and data, and that makes it a lot easier to build out skills because it understands, like Claude Code will understand your business on a more sort of refined level. So building out your skills and SOPs, which I guess also are within the context and data layer, that would be easier to translate over to Claude Code skills in a much faster way. And then I guess the final kind of layer there is building out tools, automations, agents like that. That would be like internal dashboards, different agents that would work on a scheduled basis to perform tasks within your business, or even just basic automations within parts of the business. The reason you would do that lastly, like third, is because you have all of the context and data layers built out. So you can actually then use that data and use that information to create much better agents and much better kind of automations in the process. So that's sort of like why I like to follow this sort of layered approach with clients. So whenever we onboard a new client, we'd always start by building out their context and data layer, get them using the terminal, actually understanding what they're doing, what they're building out. And then from there, it just makes it so much easier to build out your skills and build out different tools and automations internally. Yeah, I guess if we were to apply this, into a business use case on like more granular levels, there are a lot of different things that you can apply, right? So you can use the system for content, you can use it for sales and outreach, inbox, research and decisions, finance, and even just life as well. I guess on a more granular level, so for content, you'd be able to, the way I use it actually is doing competitor research. So I use AI to actually go through competitors, transcribe certain like high-performing videos, and then I understand the analytics, see what's ranking the best, and can use that to help me ideate further and actually create more pieces of content a lot faster, right? I also use it for thumbnails, as you saw in that previous skill that I showed you guys earlier. I also use it to actually post out the content automatically. So I'm creating content across YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, so 4 different platforms, and it will just automatically post those out for me, which, yeah.
Just wonder if you can show me what kind of code that you usually create as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I'll go into content a bit more detail later on anyway. And then, I guess on the sales and outreach side, like having that second brain set up and having all of that context and data logged allows you to build out a much better kind of sales and outreach system. So for some of our clients, we're actually building out voice agents, which can answer phone calls and make outbound phone calls to the leads that are coming in, or like answer their messages through WhatsApp or SMS, or even just a chatbot system, right? Building out those systems is a lot easier once you've got that second brain in place, because you've got that, it's sort of like a knowledge base that you've got for the entire business, right? And then if you're building out a voice agent, every time someone calls in, it can pull information from the second brain to help you answer questions from the customers. Obviously, you need role-based access, like you don't want a customer to have they don't want to ask about revenue and stuff like that and get that sent over to them. You'll have that all kind of controlled within the system. And then you can also use it for inbox and admin. So if you wanted to triage leads and triage emails and kind of categorize them, you can set up different agents to perform those processes for you. You can use it for booking and calls. So I guess on the sales and outreach side, sort of interlinked, where we have voice agents actually making phone calls and then booking in calls for the leads that are coming through. So yeah, having that second brain system in place basically makes it easier to build out these different internal systems within the business. And then also on the research and decision side, if you have several people in the team, again, you have that kind of role-based access system where someone can query the second brain and sort of use it as their personal assistant and Jarvis, right? So that's kind of what that would be. Obviously on the finance and reporting side, you can get weekly or daily updates. So I guess one way in which I use Claude Code on the finance side is I'm actually getting like a morning update with all of the financials in the business just straight to my phone. As soon as I wake up, I think it's sent at like 5 a.m., so I'm actually asleep at the time, but it runs autonomously, goes through all of the different tools that we use. So we use Stripe. So it goes through that, it goes through the CRM, basically gives me an entire end-to-end update on the business. So when I wake up, I just like see my phone and I've got all of that information. Then you can obviously use it on like the life side, so like I guess outside of business, if you wanted reminders just in terms of the calendar or like, I don't know, travel you're doing or like just personal admin, you can also run that through the brain. I guess what I'm doing is mostly using it on the business side, but I know other people here who have been using it also like just for general life stuff as well. And then I guess in terms of the structure of the brain, there's obviously like there are certain ways in which you want to structure it based on how your business is structured. So like personally, obviously through my Obsidian setup, you can kind of visualize how it's structured, right? In terms of how we've got the different meetings, the memory, and all of this kind of stuff down the side here. You can see that it's kind of structured in a specific way for my business. But I guess for different businesses, you have different departments and different sides to the operations and everything. So you would want a different structure. So this is kind of one example of how it could potentially be structured for you guys. I guess the way you want to get that structure is you literally want to first start by outputting all of your context into the system. So I remember like a couple months ago when I was traveling, I was just like on the train and I would just record like half an hour long voice notes of like everything that I knew in my brain. I'd feed that into Claude Code. It would take that context and then channel that into its own structure. Obviously you want to go through that structure and just kind of make sure that it's like, it makes sense and it's actually allocated things in the right place. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you give us an example of how you would talk to Claude in a way that you know would actually translate into a proper structure? Like, I'm not
Good question.
used to
Yeah,
Claude,
I see. Okay.
Give us an example of like what kind of content would be intelligible by Claude.
Okay, I see. I mean, yeah, so for example, like if I was to output things on the client side, so like you saw in my graph, there's like information about our clients. It's literally just recording a voice note. So you literally just say, like we worked with client X starting in January. This is what we're building out for them. This is like kind of where we're at with the system. Imagine it like you're talking to an employee who's like, maybe like a younger employee who probably doesn't understand things fully, and you're sort of training them up. You essentially talk to Claude in that same manner, basically, and it will take all of that information, it will transcribe that voice note when you kind of input it into Claude, and it will channel that into this kind of format here that you can see. Does that sort of make sense? Yeah, okay. I was going to walk through a content system that we built out for a client. So this is like an example of one of the systems that we built out. Okay, so yeah, in terms of like one of the systems we built out for clients. So I guess this is like an example of a use case that you could leverage internally within your business. Again, this is content related. So I guess this kind of covers like how you can apply it within content. And the way this works is like he's running like 3 different businesses, right? So he wanted a custom kind of web app internally to be able to manage content across those different businesses. So we have the content calendar here, which is where we kind of schedule out different pieces of content. I guess it all starts with the ideation tab, right? So he uses this to help him ideate. So what happens here is it's trained on his tone and voice, trained on his business, it's trained on his competitors as well. And it basically scrapes all of that information to come up with like 10 new ideas for each different type of content. So every single day it's actually coming up with one new idea. But we cap it at 10 like per content type, just so that's not so overwhelming for him. And you can see like if he clicks into one idea, he can understand exactly what that idea is, like what it's actually inspired by, and like reference URLs. So it actually shows him a competitor URL that the idea has been pulled from. So this is kind of how you can use it internally. And then he can also go ahead and like write the script. So you just click the write script button. It will then allow him to write the script from there. And then once he's done that, he can add it to his pipeline. So that will add it to his content calendar. He can then drag it into wherever he wants to schedule it out and actually publish it. So that's kind of how that system would work. And then he's also got his editor in here. So I guess the whole kind of premise of like the problems that we're solving here with this system is that he had his content manager, he had his graphic designer himself, his editor on the team. And the idea was to like free up more of their time. So like the content manager was constantly going, to Google Sheets. They were using Google Sheets before, right? So they were going to Google Sheets, picking out the piece of content, and then manually posting it out, which is very time consuming. So the idea here is to have one kind of central system where he can easily feed back to his editor. He can easily kind of get a clear oversight into what's going on the content side, and just content can just be easily published out across the platforms. So this is kind of how things will be tracked for the editor specifically. So you have ready to edit, ready to review, and approved. You have that for different kind of types of content. And then you also have like all of the analytics, which are pulled in from the social media platforms. So he can get a clear overview of like how things are doing on the analytics side. This is also something we're kind of working on and improving. But yeah, this is kind of where it's at right now. On the settings side, he can control the brand voice. So he can control like the tone and voice of like how it's actually being adjusted and how it's actually learning as well. He can also control like the brand assets. So that would be the actual like the thumbnails and the training photos that we're putting from. So it's got different angles of him so that we're actually using that to create the thumbnails in a better way. We've also got his competitors. So he gave us a list of competitors. Again, he's doing this across 3 different businesses. So you can kind of interchange using these buttons in the top right corner. And this allows him to, this basically scrapes his competitors. So for the ideation section, it will go through, scrape his competitors, understand exactly what types of content they're creating, which are performing, and then it will obviously create new ideas off the back of that. And then yeah, from here, it also helps him with thumbnails. So super similar to how I'm using it internally, but he wanted a web app, which is kind of end-to-end for him to use. And he saw kind of clear ROI with having that system in place. So like with the thumbnails here, for example, these are AI generated, right? So it's taking images of him within the system, and then it's creating these thumbnails based on the concept of the video, right? And what you can do is you can actually give it feedback in here. So we can type up some feedback, click refine thumbnail, and then it will actually refine it and improve that as well. So like what's going on here is we actually, I guess if we zoom in, it created this thumbnail initially when we hit the generate button, but then we wanted it to like make him smile, make him like look not shocked basically. And then it created this one here that you can see. So it essentially made him kind of smile with a thumbs up. So you can kind of get a feel for how that's working. And then on the back end there, what we're using is we're using Nano Banana for the image generation, and it's trained. It's got like a specific prompt that we fed in to actually create those thumbnails in a better way. And yeah, that's kind of one example of like a use case of like how you can apply it in a business sort of situation. I guess, does anyone have any questions about that kind of system?
This is a SaaS that you build for a customer?
Yeah, it was not really a SaaS, but it's like an internal web app that the customer uses. But I'm actually currently building it into a SaaS, to be fair.
And can I ask roughly how much is the cost of this internal app?
Yeah, so for like a system like this, we would charge a couple £1,000 to build this out for the client. Yeah, and it'll be like completely tailored to his flow. And then we've got him on a retainer as well, so we're working on a recurring basis with him to improve the system as well. And then yeah, I guess obviously there are sort of 3 steps that I would recommend to setting up Claude Code. So I guess for those of you that have been using it through the desktop app specifically, or maybe just through kind of anti-gravity, you want to set it up. I would highly recommend setting up through the terminal, through the command line, because it will give you a lot more control over what you're doing. And you ultimately, once you've installed it, you can then connect up Obsidian or Supabase, as the external kind of second brain system, and then obviously build out the automations around that. I'm not going to go into detail on like how to set it up, because I'm assuming, I guess if you guys don't know how to set it up, just come and see me, and I'm happy to kind of walk you through that process. There'll also be a QR code at the end if you want to, book in a call, and then I can run you through that process as well. But yeah, you essentially just use a command through your terminal to get that set up, which, yeah, you can. No, this is to set up Claude Code through the terminal. Yeah. Okay, and then I guess that, yeah, why would you use it through the terminal compared to through the desktop app? So using it through the terminal allows you to have a lot more kind of control over what it's doing, or like not really control over what it's doing, but more control over the kind of integrations and the connections. You can actually run terminal commands just directly from Claude Code within the terminal as well. And you can also run it on a remote server. So like my setup is I have it on a VPS, which is just running like 24/7. So I can connect it up to, I've got it connected up to Telegram on my phone. So it's just running on that system. So if I wanted to use it through Telegram, I can just use it on the go. I don't need to keep my laptop open and be using it through there. So it basically works a lot better through the terminal, and I don't think it's such a huge learning curve. I'd recommend that you definitely kind of look into that, and obviously you can come to me if you need help setting that up. It'll take about 15-20 minutes to get set up through the terminal, and I can just explain how that works pretty easily as well. There's kind of two options to building out that second brain. So you can either use Obsidian or Supabase. So I know Obsidian is quite a widely used thing for setting up the second brain, but I have been using Supabase as well. Like, I guess I started using Supabase and then migrated all of that information over to Obsidian just so I can visualize it and see, like, you know, how cool it looks on the back end. But yeah, the reason you can use Supabase, it's also free to use. They're both free to use, and you can basically use them in the same exact way. It's all like the only difference between Supabase and Obsidian is using markdown files to structure everything, and it's all in a graph-like format. Whereas Supabase is using tables, so imagine it as like having several Google Sheets, which are all like interconnected with each other. So that's kind of how Supabase is storing it. But yeah, it's pretty much the exact same system. I'm probably going to stick with Supabase just because I got everything stored in Supabase. But I know people here who have had like success with Obsidian and they like using it through that method as well. And yeah, once you've obviously got that second brain set up, you can then start to actually ship out automations and systems off the back of that. So you can build out the different workflows and connect up your tools. You can also put it on a schedule. So for example, for my like morning update that I've got set up through Telegram, I actually get that based on like it's called a cron job, which is just like a scheduled task that runs on your remote server. So I have a VPS set up, and then it's just running a cron job, which is just sending me that morning update on a regular basis. And then obviously you can build out internal tools, so you can build out different dashboards and systems as well. So if you wanted to track your revenue, you wanted to track content performance, or you wanted to track different client builds, you can have an internal dashboard which will log everything in one system for you there. And yeah, I'll go through my content system. I think you asked about that earlier. So essentially, in terms of the way I kind of use it, I use Trello, and then obviously plus the cron job as well. So this is kind of how it looks. So I got like all of the team kind of added into the Trello system here. And we've got the ideation section, we've got scripting, filming, editing, quality assurance, launch queue, AI published, and then also confirmed published. Essentially what this is doing is it's just kind of systemizing my content production process. So I guess like, usually initially when you start working with an editor, you might just be sending them WhatsApp messages and everything kind of gets messed up all over the place. So it's just useful to have a system like this in place to kind of structure everything. So what this is doing, like within the ideation section, is I've actually got skills set up on the back end to actually write different pieces of short form content, LinkedIn content, YouTube content, pretty much any type of content here. And those skills will automatically add them into the ideation section within Trello. And then from there, it also helps me with the scripting, right? So for writing out a LinkedIn post, it will add those straight into the scripting section, or even a YouTube video, add them straight into the scripting section. It's trained on my like tone of voice and also like competitor information. So it's pulling all of that to help it ideate and help it script as well. And then obviously the filming section, that's manual, unfortunately. You can use AI to some extent there, but I think that having that personal connection with your audience and just being raw is like super important these days. So I obviously do filming manually. But yeah, you can see here, this is sort of an example of like one piece of YouTube content that I'm kind of ideating at the moment. So this thumbnail was completely created using AI. The entire script here was kind of written using AI as well. It also creates the description. It creates obviously like a few different variations of the thumbnail, just so we can split test different thumbnail styles. And yeah, I've also created a slide deck as well. So like the slide deck is kind of what I follow in the video and actually go through. So you can kind of get a feel of like how you can actually use it within the content section or sector as well. And then you've also got the editing. So editing is obviously where I've added my editors and kind of assigned them different like videos to actually edit for me. They'll then move the card into quality assurance, where I obviously go through it and just check it. And then I actually move it into the launch queue, which is where I actually schedule the piece of content out. So I guess not only does it create YouTube thumbnails, but you can do story posts, you can do carousels, and those are all automatically added into this one system. It also obviously creates the description here. So there's a description here for the LinkedIn post, and this is going to go out today at 4 p.m. And this is the graphic, which is just automatically going to be posted out with that piece of content. I guess, yeah, it might not seem like posting out content is like maybe a huge like time save, but it kind of does save a lot of time because you know, if you're doing like a short form piece of video and you're posting that out to like 3 or 4 different platforms, then you know, you don't have to go through all of those platforms and manually post it out. So that saves a lot of time on that front as well. Yeah, the way that works, so the way I guess it posts out the content is it's using a cron job. So again, a cron job is just a scheduled task that kind of runs on a periodic basis. And all it does is it goes through that launch queue. It will then pick up the piece of content and it will post it out at the scheduled date and time. So it's going through every 5 minutes, actually going through that launch queue, understanding, like, you know, looking at the scheduled time, and then it'll pick it up and it will go ahead and post it out. So that's kind of how that works. Yeah.
Do they have API?
Yeah. So I guess the way you would connect this, so I've connected this into my Claude Code, right? That's how I've sort of built it out. So it has an API, MCP integration as well. So you just
Instagram and TikTok as well.
Oh, for Instagram, yeah, good question. Yeah, so for those, I use this tool called Zernio. Yeah, it's a very good API to integrate with because you don't want to go through the faff like with Instagram and Facebook. You have to register an app. It's very like kind of time consuming to do that. So I would recommend using Zernio. It's very good to post out content that way, and it integrates with all the platforms that you could potentially want to integrate with. Yeah. Yeah, so this is a system that I use to post out content automatically in a more streamlined way. Zernio is the system that allows me to automatically post out things, basically. Yeah.
So do you make Claude Code to create code to do all these things, or you have a skill?
Good question. Yeah, so I have Claude Code. I can kind of show you here. So within Claude Code, so these are different skills, right? You can see here there's like LinkedIn content. I've also got post content here when I was just kind of playing around with Zernio, but now it's just like fully automated. But yeah, you've got it for different types of content that you want to create. So it's all like automatically, like it's writing it out whenever you kind of call that skill. You can also just have it run on a periodic basis. So say you follow a specific schedule of like creating, 5 pieces of short form content a week. You can just have it like run that every Monday or whatever, and then you have all of the content ideas directly within your system, within Trello. But yeah, the way I'm using it is it's connected up to these different APIs. So my Claude Code is connected up to these different APIs, and it's basically doing that kind of autonomously for me. So like if you look at that other system that I shared earlier, all this is it's just a visual UI wrapped on top of Zernio. So Zernio is like here, and it's actually doing the posting for me. There's also like obviously code in the back end, which is helping with the writing the scripts. It's using Claude's API to do the script writing. It's using this tool called Claude.ai, which I can show you, which is essentially just like, it just integrates with Nano Banana and it creates the thumbnails for me. So you can use different like video or image generation tools like within Claude.ai, but to create the thumbnails or create the cover images. That's all this tool is. And then I've also got Appify, which is a pretty good one if you want to integrate different scrapers and different external tools. So for example, for doing content research, you can connect up Appify, you can scrape TikTok, you can scrape Facebook, Instagram, and actually scrape your competitors, see what they're doing. You can even scrape leads off like Google Maps if you wanted to do like outreach or whatever. And it's super cost effective. Like you get $5 free per month, which is actually, it's actually quite a lot for scraping. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's quite a lot for this. Yeah.
So let me see if I understand well. When you do the cron job, it's not like firing some kind of command to execute like Python or some kind of coding tool.
Yeah.
You're basically just firing Claude Code with one prompt that is the skill, and then Claude is doing everything.
Yeah, correct. So it's basically, the cron job would be firing Claude Code on my VPS to perform that task for me. So that's correct. So yeah, that's kind of my content system there. Yeah, so obviously, like, I'm sure you guys obviously know this, but setting up this system is like, it will save you a lot of time. Like I've seen myself kind of be like 2 or 3 times faster in terms of my work just by having this kind of system in place. Obviously, it saves you a lot of time, but by having this second brain, obviously you're putting in a lot of initial work, but then you'll save hours in the end, and you'll be able to build out better systems off the back end from that as well. So yeah, I would highly recommend you obviously apply it to your business and get that set up. And yeah, I guess if you have any questions, feel free to ask away. But yeah, if you do want to come and also see me and like discuss how you can set up Claude Code and actually start using it specifically through the terminal, or like I guess like however you want to use it, just come and see me. I'm usually at the chess tables. I'm sure a lot of you have seen me there. Or you can just scan that QR code. Obviously, I'm leaving on Sunday, so yeah, if you want to scan that QR code, you can book in a call with me next week or the week after. But yeah, I guess, does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
What's your thought about like creating skills with OCLI tools versus MCP?
Yeah.
What do you prefer and for what reasons?
So what was that? So you said?
I mean, I could access Trello
Yeah.
via MCP, or I could access Trello and say, please create me a skill with some CLI tools who speak with the API. I usually tend to the first one,
Okay.
to the skill, and write my own CLI tools with
Yeah.
the scripts.
Yeah, I think you'd use the script if you want to do something like, I guess, autonomously, right? Like that you don't want to call yourself. Obviously, that's kind of where you would use the script. So like if you wanted to, for example, for me, it's like with the morning routine thing where I get like an update every single morning. That would be a kind of script that's running on a periodic basis. Whereas if you're doing something like, I don't know, like you want to write a piece of content. Like for me, I would go into Claude Code and do that manually. So I would call that skill and do that manually, just because I would want to like oversee the process there and actually just go ahead and make tweaks myself. So it really depends on the kind of use case. So like posting is all like autonomously done because I don't need to oversee that process. That's just like running on a cron job like remotely, if that makes sense.
With less about function, I could say, okay, please build up the whole API of Trello in CLI tools.
Yeah.
What is PowerShell or shell script, whatever, and then my skill can talk with the CLI and access all the features of Trello, of the Trello API. That's what I usually do.
I see.
with MCPs.
I see.
It's basically stolen from OpenClaw.
I see. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Another point, like which customers or vertical are like the best, like they have already the SOPs in place, their social media or they're producing or whatever, which customers really are easy to serve and willing to spend money?
Yeah, good question. So I guess a lot of our customers that we work with are obviously like service-based businesses. So initially started working with a lot of local service-based businesses. So like kind of brick and mortar, like gyms were okay, but they just don't have the margins to spend on these sort of systems. Recently, we've been working with a lot of like with coaches. So like implementing this system for online coaches who have much higher margins and they want to keep the business super lean. So they're pretty good to implement these systems for. They want internal dashboards. They have like a team of 5 or so. So they want that sort of second brain which their team can query and pull information from. Also like e-commerce businesses. So I was speaking with an e-commerce business owner recently who wanted that second brain for his employees to interact with and use, and again, build out better like revenue tracking and internal dashboards through there as well. So these are the types of business owners that I would kind of recommend working with really. Yeah.
What's your thoughts on, let's say, like token maxing? Because I understand for MCPs,
Yeah.
rack up tokens. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that there are a few different ways that you can obviously reduce token usage. So like there are, like you want to use specific commands within Claude Code, like /compact or /clear, or you can change the model to Opus Plan. So I don't know if you've heard of that one, but you can use that and that will help to conserve tokens. Yeah, I mean, I haven't really bumped into like huge issues myself with token usage. So I'm on like the highest tier max plan, which is pretty useful, obviously. I mean, I've hit the limit on that before, but I think just like token conservation with like compact, clear, also just like kind of, sorting out the sessions, organizing the sessions so that they're not, you're not consuming so many tokens in there. You can also use UltraThink as well. I don't know if have you heard of UltraThink? It's like this. So basically UltraThink is like, I don't know if I'll show you actually. So within Claude Code, whenever you give it a command, so like I don't know, I'm just gonna say do X, Y, Z. Whenever you give it like a really detailed command, which is like, if say you're building out, I know you run ads, right? So say you're building out like an ad campaign for a client, or you're creating like a lot of graphics for a client, like you can use ultra think at the end. It plans thoroughly before it executes. So that will help you to conserve tokens as well. But I was mentioning model opus plan. So essentially you can use this command. So model opus plan, which basically it uses opus, like obviously opus consumes a lot of tokens, right? Opus is like token intensive. So it will use opus for like some parts of like the processing, like the more intensive process like parts. But then it will use Sonnet for the easier things, which Sonnet can handle. Because so for example, if you're building out a landing page for a client, we'll use Opus to like plan that out, but then Sonnet can execute on the UI and build out the UI just as well as Opus could. So this is another way to save tokens. But there are a few little hacks that you can implement.
Opus plan, you need to switch manually, or it will?
Yeah, so I can show you that. Let me just show you. So like right now, you can see it's using Opus 4.7 up here. So if we use, it switches to Opus plan up here. So yeah, you need to switch that manually, but you can see what it's using just up there. But yeah.
On the second brain setup with Telegram,
Yeah.
how does the session management works? Because you have one long thread, right, in Telegram?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
How does it work?
It's so it'll be one long thread in Telegram. It's probably, you can still use like compact and clear to manage that session, but yeah, I guess that's just a limitation. You can't like have like 20 sessions open like this with Telegram, which is obviously
So if you're using Telegram and you really want to make sure it doesn't use previous context, you need to clear and then save.
Yeah. You would do it that way. Yeah.
You said you use cron to find cron.
I use cron.
Cron
Yeah.
to find cron. How is going to affect you? Because you do that to use the subscription.
Yeah.
15 days. When you use crowd P,
Yeah.
cron,
Yeah.
it's going to be through API. So how is going to affect all these things? Because I'm using a lot.
Okay.
And I know that in 15th of June, I think that is going to be charged by API.
Oh, is it? Okay. I didn't know it was going to be charged, but I'm just currently using it through the subscription. So you're saying Claude-P will be through the API?
They change, and they are going to, if you are paying max, I think that they are going to give you $100 in credit.
Okay.
But I don't know if it's going to be enough to
Interesting.
cover all the.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I need to look into that.
Like the max has around $5,000 in tokens if you would reuse it 24 hours.
Yeah.
Fully. I mean, they give you as a whatever. It's a lot less.
It's a lot less. Yeah. APIs is just not cost effective. Yeah.
You're using WAP. Is it any good?
Warp. Yeah. So I guess the main reason I use Warp is because you can kind of structure it in like different sections. So you can do that in Cursor as well if you wanted to use Cursor.
Oh, this is not Tmux.
No. It's Warp. So yeah, you can like separate it out into different sections. But yeah, you can just use regular terminal. You can use Cursor if you wanted to. Any terminal is fine. Yeah.
How you usually work with customers, like to identify the right, like I see several problems, like if they have employees, they maybe hate it.
Yeah.
Because they are scared to lose the job, and what are like the things you would start, or how do you find out what the customer really
Needs.
where you start with?
Yeah, good question. So with some clients, some clients that we've spoken to, we hop on like 3 different calls, and every single call he's just got like 10 million ideas in his head. So it's like he's overwhelmed by everything, which is fair enough because the space is changing so quickly. But what we would do in that case is perform an audit. So we would literally just sit down with the client on meetings, go through all of his processes, understand what he's doing in the business. If he's got a big team, then we'll speak with people from his team, basically map out the different processes they're following, and then understand like how much time they're spending with different things, costs, like softwares that they're using, and then break that down into the sort of priority order in terms of workflows that you want to build out, really. But I'd say most clients have a fairly clear direction in terms of like where they want to go. Like they would have seen, I don't know, some of the content. They would have seen, something online about Claude Code. and they have like an idea of where they want to start. So like we've worked with a marketing agency recently, and his business, like he wants to use it for creating ads, for creating landing pages, and those kind of systems are like really kind of straightforward to implement. So
I think the most people came for you maybe over your YouTube channel are some kind of form and get ideas maybe also from YouTube.
exactly, yeah. So they'll get it from my YouTube, from LinkedIn, just the content that I put out as well. So they'll have a pretty clear understanding on like what they can potentially do. And obviously there's a lot of like content on Instagram feeds these days about Claude Code, so everyone's just getting ideas from there. Yeah. Okay.
Do you mind sharing stories? Because I know everyone thinks Claude can do everything.
Yeah.
So any horror stories of clients?
Horror stories. Horror stories. Not really, to be honest with you. I think most clients are pretty happy with how it works. I think there was one client recently is like not very technical, so we were actually I was guiding him through the Claude Code setup and getting him using Claude Code. I was actually using it through Warp, and he went away and kind of used it on his own, right? And then he like, because Warp is not just a terminal, you can also like use an agent within Warp. He started interacting with the agent, thinking he was speaking like with the terminal, and then he was kind of like 8 hours deep into one session with the agent, and then he like messaged me, and he ended up subscribing to Warp and paying like $200 for Warp specifically, which you don't need to do. And then he kind of just like didn't really understand everything. So yeah, I guess people who are maybe a little bit non-technical. I mean, he's probably an edge case. Like everyone else that I've taught has kind of like understood it pretty well. Yeah, I guess that was one example.
What's that you're using?
This is Warp. Yeah. But yeah, cool.
Where do you deploy the second brain? Where is it?
I use Superbase. Superbase, yeah.
They also host the.
Sorry?
They host the Claude session, the server.
So I'm using Hostinger for like my VPS, which is where like Claude would be like Claude Code would be hosted. But the Superbase is like where the second brain data is stored, essentially.
And do you let the Claude Code to write and modify the database? Or
Yeah.
Superbase?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah. Obviously, I guess can't remember her name, but as she mentioned earlier, I guess there's like certain data that you might not want it to tamper with, in which case you can kind of like guide it the right way, or you can give it like role-based, like specific access permissions over specific amounts, like bits of data. But yeah, it does update the data, like from my meetings and everything that I'm having. It will take that context, feed that into the second brain. It will take like any kind of information that is scraping from my content, feed that into the second brain. All of that information is just being updated constantly. Yeah.
And that information is moved to Superbase with a skill, with a prompt, or with code? Like
Yeah, it's happening through code. So it's just running through the VPS like autonomously. It will basically dump that context that is accumulated into Claude Code, into Superbase.
what I'm trying to say is like, is deterministic or not? Is done by AI or by
It's done by AI. Yeah.
by AI,
Yeah.
not algorithm?
Yeah. Not an algorithm. Yeah. AI. Yeah.
In that case, it's storing markdown files on the VPS and copying that into Superbase, or it's just directly using Superbase?
It will be directly using Superbase. So it's like it's not in or it will be a markdown format within the Superbase tables, but it's not like storing that on the VPS and then pushing it to Superbase. So,
There's no Claude IDs in your VPS.
well, there will be, but it will be like, I guess the like bulk of the, like whenever I interact with it through the VPS, it will be pushing data, also like storing bits of data within the Claude.md and like locally on the VPS, but then like a lot of it would be pushed to Superbase, basically. Yeah.
How does in your Claude code, do you have your Claude MD5, right?
Yeah.
And when you're using another LLM, Codex for that matter, or any other LLM, how do you manage context right now?
Yeah.
Have you been able to solve that via using a secondary?
Well, I haven't used Codex. I probably should start using it because I've heard.
How do you solve Codex?
I mean, it would just be a case of integrating Superbase with Codex, right? And then it can pull that context across, or Obsidian. I know you use Obsidian, so I'm assuming that'll probably be the use case.
When you say integrating Superbase, you say it's like a prompt or a skill, or when you say integrating, what do you mean? Is Claude Code with a specific and then through the skills, or this is what I don't know. So
I see.
everything is done by, let's say, agentic, not algorithm. You don't run any Python or.
I don't manually write that, but Claude Code on the back end would be writing that for certain client stuff. Like the system that I showed you earlier, this system that I showed you earlier would be using like, you know, kind of structured code on the back end to do certain tasks. Like the Supabase integration would be like it would be MCP or API integration into Claude Code, so that way it's pushing the data across that way. It's not like a, you know, structured algorithmic code basically.
So you have like a mix. Some
Yeah, correct, yeah.
And the other things is with
Correct, yeah. So I guess like for things like on the client side here, like this would be Python, right? Because it's like there's a more structure behind it. When we don't want it to have the AI kind of you know, non-deterministic aspect of it. It needs to be like, it needs to follow a set algorithm, so it doesn't break. But then yeah, for something like pushing data to Supabase, where you need an AI element to actually understand the organizational structure of Supabase and then feed in data into the right parts, that would be AI. Yeah. Okay, cool. I think that's it. But yeah, appreciate you all for. Okay, last question.
Very random question.
Thank you. All right.